and then into the first rail car. This rail, for about 400 feet of this electrified, of what is called the third rail, it started breaking apart in about 80-foot sections, and for about 400 feet of the third rail, in other words, about 400 feet of this third rail was shoved into and breaking apart into mostly the first rail car, but at least one piece penetrated over into the second rail car. The entire interior of the first rail car was burned out. And the initial indications, and this is an initial indication subject to more science, the initial indications are that the fire was fueled by gasoline from the SUV. Our survival factors group is evaluating the adequacy of the emergency exits, and we're also examining the strength, the crashworthiness strength of the rail cars. We have a group looking at signals. When I talk about signals, I'm talking about the rail signals themselves that would govern the speeds and the authority of the trains to travel along the track. And I'm talking about highway traffic signals that we're all familiar with. So we have somebody that's looking at the rail traffic signals, the highway traffic signals, as well as the crossing gates at the rail crossing. And each of these devices that I just mentioned, each of them have recorders. And we've been able to download those recorders. And again, we've only been here for a few hours. We've gotten a lot done so far, but we have not really evaluated those data to check for validity. So that's something that we believe we should be able to provide you with tomorrow when we have a media briefing. We're investigating to determine if the design requirements for this type of grade crossing meet federal requirements. We would do that in any grade crossing accident to make sure that it does comply with federal requirements. We have an expert looking, our track specialists are evaluating to see if the alignment of the third rail was within required specs. We also want to know, was the electrical power to the third rail, was it interrupted when it started to break apart as it was designed to do? So of course when the continuity of that third rail is interrupted, the power should automatically be removed, and that's something that we want to look at. Arrangements are being made to interview the train crew, the engineer and the conductor, and we hope to get that done either tomorrow or the next day. As I mentioned earlier, this morning when I briefed, these folks have been through a very traumatic event. We want to make sure that they're in a position to be able to talk to us, and so that's why we don't just rush to do it today, but we believe we can get that done either tomorrow or the next day. The mechanical condition of the train, that's something that we would always look at in any train accident. So we want to make sure, just routinely, we want to make sure that the brakes were functioning properly and look for anything that may have precluded the timely stopping of the train. The event recorders. Each of the cars of the train has an event recorder. And so one of those event recorders has been shipped to our lab in Washington, D.C., and another one has been downloaded here on site. And we're pleased to say that the one that we downloaded on site, we've had a successful download, and we plan to be able to release information to you tomorrow on that. Again, we want to look at the data, understand it, before we just give you unverified data. We also have been looking in the SUV to see if there may be any memory modules that may be useful. However, that vehicle was extensively fire damaged, and so honestly, I'm not horribly optimistic that we'll be able to recover anything from that from a memory perspective, but we are looking at that. We are conducting a complete and thorough investigation of elements that may have contributed to the intensity of the fire. The emergency response. We are interested in learning anything and everything that we can about the adequacy of the emergency response. That's something that we routinely do in any investigation. We would be looking at things like 911 records, the timeliness of the response, the number of responders. We're looking at those types of things. That's the rail components of this investigation. There's a highway component to it, and that is to basically the big question everybody wants to know is why was this vehicle in the crossing? And we want to understand, as many of you know, there was a traffic detour yesterday evening due to a prior traffic highway crash on the expressway. So we want to understand what, if any, effect that detour may have played in setting up this accident sequence. We're interested in talking to witnesses. As we know, in this day and age, everybody has cell phones and video and things like that. We're interested in any video footage that people may have. If anybody witnessed the accident or would like to provide us with information, we have set up an email address, and we would invite you and encourage you to email the NTSB at witness@ntsb.gov. Again, that's witness@ntsb.gov. We're optimistic that there will be video footage out there. We're also amazed that we get video footage from places that we didn't think we would get, security cameras and things like that. But we will ask the public for help in finding, helping us with video footage or with witnesses. Throughout the next several days, our investigators will continue to thoroughly document the scene, gather factual information. As I've said before, we are here to collect the perishable information, perishable evidence, the information that can go away with the passage of time. And that's what we're here to do, is to find that information. We're not here to speculate. We're not here to determine the cause of the accident while we are here. We're here just to collect the information, and then we go back and conduct a very thorough analysis of those facts. I suspect we will be here on scene for anywhere from 5 to 7 days. I want to thank and acknowledge the efforts of the local community for their cooperation and support. We want to thank the first responders for their efforts. We will be providing you information as we find it. We will plan to do a media briefing tomorrow, probably about the same time as this, because our investigators are out during the day doing the work, and then in the afternoon they can debrief me so I can debrief you, and that's usually why they're fairly late in the afternoon. You can find out when those media briefings will be by watching us at Twitter, following us at Twitter. Our handle is @NTSB, or you can look at our website for press releases at ntsb.gov. Now, I'll be glad to take questions. What I'd like to ask, if you would kindly raise your hand when I call on you. Please state your name and your affiliation. We have a lot of hands. Sir, Mr. Costello.
Thank you, Mr. Sumwalt. It's early, but is there any indication that the crossing signals or crossing arms were not working properly?
The question is there any indication that the crossing arms or signals may not have been working properly? At this point, we have no indication to believe that they were doing anything other than operating properly. However, our investigation is just beginning, and we are looking at that information very carefully. So there's a question here.
Paul Beeben from Al Jazeera. This is not the first time that Metro North has come under this kind of scrutiny. They've been under tight scrutiny for a series of crashes. Is enough being done, generally speaking, to make this railroad safer?
Question is concerning the prior accident history of Metro North, and is enough being done to ensure safety? And I want to point out that, yes, the NTSB did release a report the third week in November, a special investigation report about the organizational issues with Metro North. I believe those issues, at the time that report was issued, was valid, but I also want to caution that there may be no relationship between those issues that we found in that special investigation report and this accident. So I think that's the salient point there, is that here it appears that a vehicle was on the track and the train ran into the track. So I would be very cautious in trying to draw a nexus between what's happened with Metro North in the past and what may have happened yesterday. Come here.
Jessica Schneider, WCBS TV. You mentioned looking for witnesses, finding any video they might have. You seem to mention maybe surveillance video somewhere around. Have you seen any video that would give you any better indication as to what happened?
Have we seen any video that might give us a good indication of what happened? And at this point, I'm not aware of any video that surveillance video that may have come forward. However, again, this accident was less than 24 hours ago. It was about 23 hours ago, and oftentimes we do find within the days following the accident that there are surveillance videos that we didn't even know about. So we are looking for that, and that's why we've asked for the help of the public to identify such topics. Alan Levin.
Mr. Sumwell, could you go again through the scenario of where the third rail went through?
So the third rail, of course, the railroad tracks, and tomorrow we're going to try and have a map for you to show you all of this. But the question is, can I describe better about the scenario of the third rail penetrating the rail cars? The third rail, we've got a north-south running track. The Harlem line, of course, was the train was running north. To the west of the railroad track is the third rail. It appears that at the time that if this would be the railroad track and this would be the vehicle, it appears that this third rail lodged into the back left of the car at an angle, came out of the car at the right side, above the wheel, above the back right, rear right tire. So it's at an angle, coming from this high off the ground to this high off the ground. So it's at an angle, and it continues that trajectory, and actually strikes just in front of the first set of train wheels. So there's a lot of mass with those wheels, which further leverages this in an upward direction. So as the train is moving down the track, this third rail is just basically lodging into, in 80-foot sections, lodging into and breaking apart section by section, 80-foot sections, section by section, just basically piling up inside that first train car. And finally, at least one of those third rail segments penetrated through into the second car at a very high, almost at the ceiling level. So, Alan, I hope that clarifies it, and if not, we can have some follow-up questions. There's a question here.
Hello, Ida Siegel from WNBC. In light of what you just said, we've had a number of other commuter rail accidents involving a train hitting a car, and to my knowledge, no other train passengers have died in those accidents. Would you then characterize this accident as particularly dangerous, troubling? How would you characterize this accident in light of that fact?
We do have grade, the question is, we do have grade crossing accidents. Oftentimes, most of the time, it's fatal for the occupants of the vehicle, the car, the truck, but not for the train passengers. And that is a true statement. Usually, it does not cause, we have seen Merriam, Nevada, just a few years ago, is an Amtrak train where a truck ran into the side of an Amtrak train. But you're right. Usually, it is not endangering the occupants of the train. We intend to find out what makes this accident different. What was it that made this different that caused this to be fatal to 5 people on board that train? That's really going to be the heart of it, is the survival factors issues. 2 big questions: why was the car on the train tracks, and what caused this accident to be fatal for occupants of the train? There's a question here.
Sir, thank you. Josh Young here, WADC. After the spike in dival tourism, it became clear through your reporting that the MTA, Metro North, had not invested in a whole slew of technology that could have prevented that crash. Positive control, the detonate switch, what have you. Does there exist in the world technology that could allow the engineer of the train to know there is an obstacle in his path before he sees it before it's too late to stop? And if so, should the MTA, should Metro North already have it in place?
The question is there technology available that would allow an engineer of a train to be able to see an obstacle on the track before it might become even visible to the naked eye? And honestly, Mike, yes or no?
Not proven technology.
So, I mean, I've been studying rail accidents for 8.5 years, and I'm not familiar with that technology. Mike's been in the business for 25 years plus, and this is the first I've heard of that. You know, we have been a long advocate of positive train control, which we believe will prevent a lot of accidents, but this type of an accident, I don't believe there's technology that's out there.
Just to follow up, I mean, is there basically no way to stop a grade crossing accident like this if the engineer doesn't see the car?
So can you stop a grade crossing accident? We certainly believe that grade crossing accidents can be prevented, and that's why we're here. Our entire purpose for being here. We're not in the business of pointing fingers, laying blame, assigning fault. We're here for one reason, and that is to find out what happened so that we can keep these things from happening again. So yes, grade crossing accidents can be prevented. We've issued recommendations in that area, a number of recommendations over the last few years. So yes, they can be prevented. This one we want to find out, just as I mentioned earlier, what made this one different than others. So I'll take one last question, and we'll go, let's see where we'll go. We'll go right over here in the red. Hi.
I was wondering if you had at this point the play-by-play of what happened when the driver entered the crossing gate, the rail crossing, why she wasn't able to either back out or drive forward, just exactly what happened.
Can you say whether she was in the car or not?
Okay. Do we have a play-by-play of if the driver got out of the car? We've heard reports of perhaps she had gotten out of the car and things like that. Do we know if she was in the car at the time of the collision? And what we intend to do is to put together that very play-by-play. We want to put together a timeline to understand, and I think that we can do that with a number of things. The event recorders will help us, any video evidence we may have. I understand that there's a gentleman who was directly behind the SUV when the accident occurred. So we believe, I'm confident that we will be able to put together a good timeline of this event. One of the things we'll be doing too is a sight distance test to see that if you were stopped on the tracks, at what point could you be able to see a train, and the opposite of that, at what point could the engineer of the train be able to see a stopped vehicle. I want to thank you for your attention. We will be providing you information as we learn it. Eric, I think you have a few things to say. Thank you all very much.
You could follow us on Twitter. Our hashtag is @NTSB.
And you also follow us at our website, www.ntsb.gov. We'll probably have our next press conference tomorrow at the same location and probably same time. We'll have more information tomorrow.
Before you break up, we have the county executive and the state senator, Terrence Murphy here, if you have any questions for them.
If anyone has any questions, I know we had briefings this morning and this afternoon, but if anyone has any questions with regard to what the county is doing, the ME is doing, et cetera. Stefan, yeah.
Anything the county's doing latest on transportation, getting around beeline service?
Well, we're working with the MTA. Again, the lots will be available if they're needed tomorrow at the county center, at the North White Plains train station. Buses are still going to be provided, again, if needed. This is kind of fluid right now because if the train is off the track and if they can get the Harlem line running, then that may not be needed tomorrow. But we're going to continue to work with the MTA tonight on buses to and from and between Pleasantville and North White Plains.
Is there anything being done in other crossing areas in the county? Is there anything to do? I mean, should people be concerned or?
Well, I think obviously you have to have caution when you're driving. We and the DOT and the engineers constantly are going out looking at improvements, as does the state and the federal agencies. There are so many crossings. I was just reading today that I think there was 280,000 railroad crossings in the United States. In the year 2013, the last year that they had the statistics for it, there were about 250 deaths at railroad crossings and about 900 and some odd injuries. A lot of those are rural areas where they do not have the arms, but about 30% of them do, so it's not something that's completely uncommon. But I think for this, we need to let the investigation go forward and see where it leads before we start reaching any conclusions.
Can you give an update on the identification process of the victims at the Attorney's office and the process of communicating with families?
Yeah, the ME is still working with the families. The process is that until the families come forward with the dental information or the dentist of the family comes forward, that can positively be used to identify. There can't really be a release of names until they have a positive identification. Now, for the most part, communities already know who the deceased are because of the reactions in each community. Having said that, we can't release the name until it becomes official.
I guess my question is, have 5 families been in contact with the county?
It's my understanding that most of the families have been in contact with either the ME or the MTA police. So that process is moving forward. Yeah.
You've got to just,
I'm sorry.
we just need to take one break here for a second.
I don't work for the NTSB, let's make that clear. Move in the county logo, please. Okay, I don't work for the feds. Yes, but I will say that the NTSB has been tremendous in their investigation. They have 2 components here. They have the investigation division, you just heard from them. They also have basically a family services unit that's up working with the county mental health crisis team, as well as the Red Cross and the medical examiner, and available for families in need. So we're all working together on this. I'm sorry, what was the question? I think, to the commuters, and I was a commuter, for 8 years, 9 years, up until the end of 2009 before I took office. So I was running to Grand Central at the end of the day, trying to come home, and I think like probably everyone on that train, you call the home or you send an email, I'm on my way. And, little did you know that the world was going to turn upside down and you were going to be in that position, or that somebody was not going to come home. For me, and I know Supervisor Fulgenzi is here from Mount Pleasant, Senator Murphy, who represents the area. You know, everyone is affected by this because it happens right here. I think for most people, you know, you have to move on with some sort of normalcy, but that's going to take time for people. That's why we've said, look, our mental health experts are available to people who need it, not just the immediate family, those affected, but also people who were on the train who did escape, that did get out alive, that even got out without any injuries. People in the community who are dealing with the grief. The county and the mental health experts are available to people.
To your question before, just so people know, there's a shuttle that is going from southeast down to northern White Plains and from Golden's Bridge down to northern White Plains and obviously from Pleasantville. And it'll be the reverse. So we've worked very close with the MTA and they've been wonderful so far.
Peter?
Yeah, who's responsible for the grade crossings and what concerns do you have about their safety?
Well, look, that is the exact spot that I enter the Parkway in the morning when I go to work. Right at Commerce, to make a left to go southbound on the Taconic extension to the Bronx River Parkway into White Plains. So for me, that particular location has always been worrisome because I see people trying to get across Lakeview at that one particular crossing to come across the Taconic, either make a right or left, or to go straight to go onto Commerce. And there's confusion among drivers of who goes where. So from a perspective as drivers, that is an area that has worried me. And it's something that I'm going to speak to the state to see what can be done in that particular location. And I'll be working with Senator Murphy on it. As far as the MTA riders, you know, Metro North riders, you know, when you get on a train, you expect to get home safely. And so I think the MTA, and I've spoken to Chairman Prendergrass many times over the last day, the MTA knows how serious this incident was, and they put safety above everything else. So I think they're going to work very, very hard to make sure there's not only a thorough investigation, but that they earn the confidence of their riders.
But do you think what happened here was kind of a systemic thing, that the infrastructure's not right, or is it a fluke? Somebody just got in there and then they couldn't get out?
I think, unfortunately, there's always human error every day and around the world, and this might have been human error. But I think we need to let the investigation go through to find out and get our questions answered.
But that confusion you spoke of at
Yeah.
Commerce Street, in this particular scenario, the direction that she was coming from, is it possible that she experienced that?
Well, I don't know. There was an accident at milepost 1.6, which is very close to that particular spot. So there was a previous accident which did have backups of traffic. That Lakeview Avenue is a cut-through, goes through the cemetery, stops at the crossing, traffic light, and then Taconic north or south or across to Commerce. So whether there was confusion with her or whether there was a backup, that's all part of the interviewing process, and I think everyone wants to know what happened, why she made the decision she made, if it was, in fact, human error.
Following up on the confusion point, let's say the NTSB finds out that it was human error. Is the county's DOT still looking for perhaps additional lights or some kind of changes?
Well, there's a lot of jurisdictions there. You have Metro North, you have county, you have state. So, well, the county's Commerce, and the state is the Parkway, and Metro North, MTA, is the railroad tracks. So, you know, there's three different jurisdictions. I think the best thing is for the engineers to get out and see what, if any, safety precautions need to be taken in the future. Maybe it's okay as it is, and maybe this is just a freak accident. But I think that's part of the ongoing investigation.
Not to belabor the point, but who did you say was responsible for that crossing? Is there?
Well, it's sort of a confluence of three different areas there. You've got the right-of-way, which is Metro North and the train tracks. You have Commerce, which is a county road, and you have the Taconic State Parkway.
So if one of those arms was, say, broken in a hypothetical situation?
I think that would be Metro North's property.
That would be Metro North?
Yeah.
That would fix that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Was it on
Rip?
Lakeview Ave at the time of the accident? Was she like crossing in front of on Lakeview?
I think that's part of the investigation. I mean, where the car was in between Lakeview and the tracks, so.
I don't know if this is
If you've
something.
seen the accident firsthand, you've talked to the victims, you've talked to the victims' families, you've kind of seen all angles of this. How do you sum this up when people see these pictures on TV or on the internet? How do you sum up an experience like this?
You know, you see the lives that were taken and the lives that were left behind. You know, the wives, the family members, children. You know, it's a horrific accident, no matter what way you look at it. And it's something that is not going to end tonight. This is something that a whole community is going to grieve, that families are going to grieve, and we sort of get through this together. There are questions that need to be answered. That's in the process. But in the meantime, we lend our hearts and we lend our helping hands to anyone who needs it.
There's been talk about the safety gate actually falling on the rear end of her car. I don't know if you know the answer to this, but in that scenario, are you even able to back up, or how?
I don't know I don't know the answer.
Independent of.
Looks pretty tight.
Did the county look at all the other crossings in the county, examine what can and should be done differently?
Yeah, I mean, we will constantly do that. You know, part of DOT, state, county, you know, local, Mount Pleasant, or any town, DPW crews are all constantly doing that. You know, there's so many roads, there's so many bridges, there's inspections all the time. And again, look, at the end of the day, this might ultimately be the worst just human error and a tragedy.
When was the last time that the crossing was inspected?
I don't know. I'd find that out. Thank you. Okay, thank you, everybody.
Real quick shout out to the first responders that were there very quickly to save a bunch of lives. So everybody, the police department, the fire department, Westchester County, I know supervisor over here from Mount Pleasant was getting everybody possible to the scene. So to all of our first responders, thank you.